serving up togetherness. Soy green tea, only $15. Cappuccino, only $12.
Would he go through hell for you? Or is he giving you hell? Is your buddy covering your back? Or is he stabbing you in the back? Do you have die-hard friends? Or would they stand by and watch you die? Hold it! You don't have to prove your friendship and love by taking drugs. Stand firm. Knock drugs out.
A rock and roll mystery.
What's this?
They are making a documentary on the band.
Takes Castle and Beckett behind the music. Thursday, as the investigation begins.
That's the murder weapon.
Les Paul, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm rarely mistaken.
The cameras will catch all the scandals, sex, and secrets.
Hey, what are you guys doing here?
Thursday, Castle at 10:35 on Pearl.
It was 20 years ago. Ever since, time has never been so magical.
The time now is 11:41. The Time Check was brought to you by Chopin.
Maid who was allegedly brutally abused by her employer returns to Hong Kong. Student protesters in Taiwan to end their sit-in this week. And Blade Runner apologizes at murder trial. Good evening. Indonesian domestic helper Ariana returned to Hong Kong today to help with the police investigation into alleged abuse by her former employer. But a migrant workers group helping Ariana claimed she was taken to the Indonesian Consulate General against her will. Police say she's there for her own safety. Jenny Lam reports.
Ariana Sulisthaningsih was escorted by police to a van at the airport sent by the Indonesian Consulate General after arriving in Hong Kong this afternoon. She was with her father and a lawyer. A migrant workers' rights group with whom Ariana was going to stay said she was whisked away against her will.
This is the letter signed by Ariana, and it is clearly stated here that she wanted the Mission for Migrant Workers to make the arrangement for her accommodation here in Hong Kong. She also instructed here that she wanted to meet with Mr. Melville Bose, the lawyer of the Mission for Migrant Workers, with regards to her civil case.
Two of Ariana's friends who flew to Hong Kong with her today were briefly held at the immigration counter. They were eventually allowed to enter the territory. When Evelina left Hong Kong a few months ago, there were wounds and bruises on her body. She later claimed she was abused by her former employer. She stayed in hospital in Java for more than 20 days. Her former employer, a 44-year-old woman, faces 7 charges, including wounding, common assault and making a criminal threat. She will appear in court again on the 29th of April. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
The government has announced details of a pilot scheme on a proposed garbage tax. As Dianto reports, it's a trial run which could ultimately decide how much we end up paying to get rid of our rubbish.
This municipal solid waste charging pilot scheme, with 20 blocks from 7 housing estates volunteering to take part in it, is the government's first step in figuring it all out.
The trial scheme is to test out the logistics and also what are the supporting facilities in need and what are the response of the residents in relation to the quantity-based charging.
Wong said up to 90% of Hong Kong's residential buildings have estate management, so it's a good first trial. But he didn't say whether the experiment would be extended to standalone buildings later on. The 7 estates, which include both public and private housing, will begin the 5-month trial within the next 2 months. A baseline survey will be carried out during the month before each estate starts its trial. Different estates will try out different options, including a volume-based per-household option. For this, each household will have to buy official rubbish bags from the property management. 2 other building-based options will calculate charges for the rubbish disposed of either by weight or bin numbers in a collective way, then divided by the number of units in the building. Because this is only a trial, the money so collected will not be going to the government. Residents of the housing estates taking part in the pilot scheme will have to decide with their property management company whether the trial will involve actual monetary transactions. Alternatively, the property management can simply make note of how much, theoretically, each household or building would have been charged. And there's also the question of what to do with the money if residents are really charged. 4 housing blocks at Amoy Gardens in Ngau Tau Kok have signed up for the pilot scheme. They'll be trying out all 3 waste charge options, and residents seem positive about taking part in the program.
It will become a reference price for us, and also if the price is affordable, I think I will support the price.
The chairman of the Estates Owners Corporation admitted because it's only a trial, there's no real incentive to force everyone to take part properly. But he said the estate will try to persuade the residents to contribute to the trial so that useful data can be collected for reference. Diane To, TVB News.
Student protesters in Taiwan have announced they will end their sit-in at the Legislative Yuan. This comes after the island's legislative speaker promised to stop all discussions on the controversial trade pact with the mainland until an oversight bill has been implemented. Finally, a breakthrough in the Taiwan student protest. This evening, the students announced they will pull out of the Legislative Yuan at 6 p.m. on Thursday. The students have been camping out at the Parliament building for 3 weeks, demanding the government remove a cross-strait trade pact with the mainland. One of the leaders, Chang Wei-ting, called on all of their supporters to gather at the Legislative Yuan one last time on Thursday before the protesters pull out. But some students still want the trade deal quashed and believe the protests should continue. Chan's announcement came after Parliamentary Speaker Wang Jinping visited the students yesterday, urging them to leave the building. He promised that the trade pact will not be further discussed until an oversight bill is passed, which regulates any trade agreements the island makes with the mainland. Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou welcomed the move. He called on legislators to take note of the public's opinion and hopes that the oversight bill can be passed during this legislative term. Explosive testimony by Oscar Pistorius, who is on trial for murdering his girlfriend. While taking the witness stand in his own defense, the Paralympic track star begins sobbing while apologizing to the victim's family. Sonia Itera reports.
The first words Oscar Pistorius uttered in his own defense was an apology to Riva Steenkamp's family for gunning her down on Valentine's Day. Words that were met with a stone-cold stare by the victim's mother.
I'd like to apologize and say that there's not a moment, and there hasn't been a moment since this tragedy happened, that I haven't thought about your family.
The disabled South African track star claims he fired 4 times through a toilet door of his Pretoria home, believing he was defending Riva from an intruder.
I can't imagine the pain and the sorrow and the emptiness that I've caused you and your family. I was simply trying to protect Riva.
He also alleged he never would have hurt Riva because he deeply loved her.
I can promise that when she went to bed that night, she felt loved.
The court also heard that Pistorius shot Steenkamp with at least 3 rounds of bullets, one of which, to the head, killed her almost instantly. He claims he's never been able to sleep since the shooting, and because he has terrible nightmares, he has to constantly medicate himself to sleep.
Where I wake up and I can smell blood, and I wake up to being terrified.
He further claims that losing Riva as a result of gunning her down means he never wants to touch a gun again.
On that particular night, I don't obviously ever want to handle a firearm again or be around firearm.
Today's distraught Pistorius was in stark contrast to the gun-obsessed, fast-living hothead that prosecutors have described him as being in the first 16 days of the trial. The trial resumes tomorrow. 7Apr2014, TVB News.
Tensions are spilling over in eastern Ukraine as pro-Russian demonstrators clash with Ukrainian riot police. Some protesters have seized government buildings in the region. And Ukraine's defense ministry says a Ukrainian naval officer was shot dead by a Russian soldier in Crimea. The developments are stoking fears of a wider Russian incursion into the region. James Aiken has more.
The protests by pro-Russian demonstrators are growing more forceful and more widespread. In Donetsk, several thousand pro-Russian supporters rallied against the government in Kiev. Our main positions are not to join the European Union, not to head towards NATO, not to fight, says this protester named Svetlana. I do not recognize the current government because now we have oligarchs in charge again. The old ones are gone, the new ones arrived, says Asya, another demonstrator. In Luhansk, just 30 kilometers from the Russian border, police have closed down entrances into the city after hundreds of pro-Russian protesters broke into state security headquarters and seized weapons. A similar situation is unfolding in Kharkiv, where hundreds of demonstrators tussled with police. One demonstrator managed to evade riot police and appeared on the first floor of the regional administration building, waving a Russian flag. Separatist sentiment has sparked frequent protests since Ukraine's Russia-friendly president was ousted in February and Russia seized Crimea. Half of Ukraine's residents are ethnic Russians, many of whom believe the country's acting authorities are Ukrainian nationalists bent on oppressing Russians. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk today called the protesters radicals who are part of a plan to destabilize the country. The Kremlin argues that Russia has the right to protect Ukraine's Russian-speaking population. Russia has moved large contingents of troops near the Ukrainian border, and speculation is strong that unrest in eastern Ukraine could be used as a pretext for a broader Russian incursion. James Aiken, TVB News.
Promising news in the hunt for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane today. Australia says underwater signals detected by one of its ships are consistent with audible pings from aircraft black boxes. But as 7Apr2014 reports, verification could take days.
Today marks 30 days since flight MH370 vanished without a trace. This is also the day the jetliner's black box batteries are supposed to stop working. So, finding two new acoustic leads in the nick of time has everyone hoping it will unravel this haunting mystery.
The towed pinger locator deployed from the Australian defence vessel Ocean Shield has detected signals consistent with those emitted by aircraft black boxes.
Here's why this lead is so promising. The first signal detected was held for more than 2 hours before the Ocean Shield lost contact. But then the signal was heard again for about 13 minutes.
Clearly, this is a most promising lead. And again, I would ask all of you to treat this information cautiously and responsibly until such time as we can provide an unequivocal determination.
Given the treacherous ocean conditions, confirming the find will take days. Here's the game plan to be 100% sure.
If they gain another acoustic event on that towed pinger locator, that will be the trigger at the moment to launch the autonomous underwater vehicle with a more accurate sonar and potentially camera for mapping and visually looking at the ocean floor.
As for the pulse signals that Haishan 01 detected for 2 days, China